The bright side of addiction is recovery, and recovery is an American way of life. If you're in recovery or know or love someone who is, or maybe you simply want to find out more about the recovery process, or maybe you're a bit concerned about someone you know or love who is harmfully using alcohol or any other drug, this is the podcast for you. As we carry the message of hope and the promise of recovery. And a reminder, you can find all of our podcasts at recoverycoasttocoast.org. Recent episodes have featured an historic interview with Mrs. Betty Ford that was done 41 years ago, actor John Larroquette, astronaut Buzz Aldrin, musician Bonnie Raitt, authors Brene Brown, Anne Lamott, J.A. Jance, former NFL players Ryan Leaf and Thomas Hollywood Henderson, plus everyday people in long-term recovery, sharing their story, their insight, and their path. Welcome to Recovery Coast to Coast, the national podcast. Now, in this edition, we are going to have a conversation with a former national media star, a woman who was a television news anchor for the three major national television networks, MSNBC, CNN, and Fox News. Her name, Laurie Dhue, and she hid her disease for most of her career, hiding in public until she found her moment of clarity on the floor of a New York City cab. And now, some 16 years later, she shares her story of what it was like to be a practicing alcoholic on national television in front of millions of people, and how she found recovery. Here is a quick clip from today's podcast and the interview with Laurie Dhue.
I had been drinking alcoholically for the better part of 17, 18 years, and obviously things were coming to a head. I was extremely unhappy. I didn't recognize who I was when I looked in the mirror. I didn't feel right. I was living a secret life, a double life. I was a national news anchor, but also was keeping a deep, dark secret that I was a raging alcoholic. And it was killing me slowly, as this disease does. You know how alcoholics and addicts are. We're really crafty. We're really good at hiding in plain sight. And certainly I was hiding in front of an audience of 1 million people at a time.
Our conversation with Laurie Dhue is coming right up. I'm Neil Scott, host of Recovery Coast to Coast, and I want to begin the podcast, as we do each time, by really telling you how much I appreciate you listening to our podcast. Now, I realize your time is important. There's a lot of choices that you have, many podcasts that you can be listening to right now, and a lot of them about recovery. I thank you for listening to ours. Our website is recoverycoasttocoast.org. Following 15 years of nightly broadcasting on iHeartRadio here in Seattle, our podcast features interviews with everyday people in recovery, as well as clinicians, authors, and recovering celebrities who offer the promise of hope and the reality of recovery, plus well-vetted resources for individuals, families, and friends. We invite you to enjoy the podcast and to share it with your friends as well. Recovery is living proof, and recovery is an American way of life. A reminder, our email address, if you'd like to get in touch with us, we'd love to hear from you, recoverycoasttocoast, spelled out, at comcast.net. Recovery Coast to Coast is supported by Sundown M Ranch, one of America's oldest, least expensive, and most successful treatment programs. The rate for inpatient treatment at Sundown, all inclusive. There's no surprises, as they strive to offer the most affordable treatment while providing excellent care for you and your friend or your loved one. They take pride in their 55-year reputation for assisting individuals and family members through a very difficult process, and they do it with compassion, with respect, and with the utmost confidentiality. Sundown M Ranch recently celebrated their 55th anniversary, and they've treated, close to 200,000 patients. They have a separate program, by the way, for adolescents, and it's very successful. All treatment abstinence-based and 12-step centered. They offer an integrated system of care, including withdrawal management, residential treatment, outpatient services, and continuing care. They are in network with most insurance plans, and an admission specialist can quickly obtain a quote. And they can work with the insurance provider, so basically you don't have to. Sundown, which is a not for profit organization, is located, it's beautiful, 30 acres at the mouth of the beautiful Yakima River Canyon in the middle of Washington State. I could not be more proud to have them as a supporter and sponsor of Recovery Coast to Coast. Sundown M Ranch, where recovery begins, sundown.org. I'm not sure about you, but coffee is my drink of choice, and I invite you to join me as we share a cup of coffee and my conversation with Laurie Dhue, a former national news anchor for all three of the major television networks, MSNBC, CNN, and Fox News. She has been in recovery for 16 years, and she talks openly about how drinking nearly killed her, and she was hiding in plain sight in front of millions of people. I caught up with Laurie at the recent National Leadership Conference of NAATP, which is the National Association of Addiction Treatment Providers. Here's my conversation now with Laurie Dhue. Welcome back once again to Recovery Coast to Coast, America's Voice for Recovery. We are on the road. We are at the 44th Annual Conference, the Leadership Conference of NAATP, the National Association of Addiction Treatment Providers. And in this edition of the podcast, time to get real. And I'm talking about real recovery education. And I ran into an old friend. She had been on the program many, many years ago, and she was a former anchor at MSNBC, CNN, Fox. She has been all over the airwaves. Laurie Dhue. Laurie, good to see you again.
It is great to see you, too.
Goodness.
And you called me your old friend.
Yes.
Does that mean I'm old?
It means I'm old. You're the friend, I'm the old.
We're both older than the last time we saw each other. That's how this works.
And we will never be younger than we are today.
Which is why we got to live in the moment,
That's right. That's right. And the moment is now. You were on the show many years ago. You've been doing a lot of things in between, but to catch people up, take us back to, let's start with March of 2007 and tell me about Laurie's life.
March 2007, when the month started, I didn't know it was going to be the month that changed my life. But on March 14th of 2007, I gave up the battle with alcohol.
How long had it been going on?
I had been drinking alcoholically for the better part of 17, 18 years, and obviously things were coming to a head. I was extremely unhappy. I didn't recognize who I was when I looked in the mirror. I didn't feel right. I was living a secret life, a double life. I was a national news anchor, but also was keeping a deep, dark secret that I was a raging alcoholic. And it was killing me slowly, as this disease does. So I knew that I had to do something or I wasn't going to make it. I would be 6 feet under before the age of 40. I just knew. I knew it.
Did other people know? Did people say, Laurie, I'm a little concerned about you?
Well, you know how alcoholics and addicts are. We're really crafty. We're really good at hiding.
Yeah.
Hiding in plain sight.
Yeah.
And certainly I was hiding in front of an audience of 1 million people at a time. But yeah, I had a couple people in my life, and including a very well-known anchor at one of the news networks, who shall remain nameless, who came to me and said, you're killing yourself. And I said, it's none of your business. And by the way, I'm having a good time. So buzz off. Although I don't think I said it in that
probably
nice
clean that
of a
up
way.
A little bit. Yeah.
But I don't think anyone knew the extent to which I was drinking. My family wasn't aware. A couple of my closest friends knew, but they also drank heavily. So, of course, water seeks its own level.
Sure.
So I was only spending time with people who drank the way I did. But anyway, going back to your original question, March 14th of 2007 was my moment of grace. I went out to dinner with a friend. He did not order any alcohol because he said he was allergic to it. And I thought, what an interesting response. How could you be allergic to alcohol? When really, of course, I had been allergic to it my whole life. So he did not order a drink, and I decided I'd order a glass of white wine. But when the wine was delivered to the table, I didn't touch it. I looked at it, and it was as if a thunderbolt came down from God and said, "This is your moment. You don't have to drink this." And I didn't. And on the way home in a cab, this is before Uber, in the cab, I got on the floor of the cab and I started praying, "God, if this is it, please let me know. If this is my moment, please let me know." And that was it. He let me know, and I never drank again after that night.
What happened on the 15th of March?
I woke up nervous, excited, not feeling great because I was already in withdrawal.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was under the care of a psychiatrist who I had hired to help me get to the point to admit that I had a problem out loud and to get better, get help. And I knew one person in AA. That's it. Someone who I used to drink heavily with. I called him and he said, "Oh, thank goodness, Laurie, I've been waiting years for your call." So I had a kind of a painful detox for a couple of weeks when my body was ridding itself of the toxins from alcohol. And then I went to my first meeting.
What was that like for you?
I was scared because, I thought I was terminally unique. I thought I was the only person in the world who had this problem and that no one would understand me because I am so special. I'm being sarcastic right now.
Of course.
But I was introduced to a woman in AA. We met on the sidewalk on the Upper East Side of Manhattan and went into a very well-known meeting called Rhinelander, which if any of your listeners are from New York, they'll know it. I met her on the sidewalk. She gave me a hug, and she looked just like me, basically. And she said, "I got you. We're going to go in together, and if you feel like saying your name when we all go around and say, 'Hi, I'm an alcoholic. My name is blank,' feel free to do so. You're in a safe place." And I'll tell you, when I first said, "Hi, I'm Laurie, and I'm an alcoholic," for the first time, the voice that came out of me was a tiny, scared little voice of a child.
Of course.
But that was it. Changed my life. And here we are 16 years later and still working a program, still very fond of the 12-step philosophy.
Tell me about that first year of recovery in AA.
Sure. The first year they say, it's unique to every individual, but you have ups and downs. And I was on that pink cloud that we hear so much about for the first 6 months. In the first 6 months, I was undergoing all kinds of physical changes and emotional changes and spiritual changes. And people thought that I had had a facelift because I looked so different. And I was like, you know what? I'm only 38. When it's my time to go in for plastic surgery, I'll let you know. But I look so different because I'd stopped drinking and my voice had changed. I found that I was more productive at the news network where I was. I looked better on camera. I showed up at work on time. I was easy to work with, all of those things that I hadn't been. But then I'll tell you that the second 6 months of that first year were a little tougher because I came off the pink cloud and realized, okay, this is serious, and I'd like to do this forever.
And you got work to do.
And I'm still anchoring every day on a major news network, and, I have to really, it's not that I wasn't taking it seriously, but I realized this feels good, this 6 months feels good, and I want to get another 6 months, so I really got to buckle down and, one day at a time.
And that's exactly what you did.
That's what I've done. That's it.
It's interesting. You said that the guy that you had a dinner with, who was allergic to alcohol. I interviewed a guy about a year ago, and he says, "I was allergic to alcohol. I broke out in spots when I drank. L.A., Miami, Chicago."
Right. That's right. Yeah, ha.
Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is that all of us who have struggled with alcoholism, we are allergic to it.
Yeah, of
we
course.
learn that.
Right. Absolutely. So you go on, and it was around 2011, if I recall, that you started becoming an advocate for recovery. How did you morph into that?
Well, it was not by choice. So my anonymity was broken in a very public way on the internet. It doesn't get more public than that.
Right.
So someone decided to tell my story. knowing that I was in recovery, and decided to break the news that Fox News CNN anchor Laurie Dhue was an alcoholic throughout her TV career, and now she's sober, but here's what happened to her. And I honestly thought, it's over. I'll never work again. Everyone will shame me. Everybody knows now. My life is over. And instead, it became the beginning of my next phase of life, which was national advocacy for recovery. So I decided to really go public after my anonymity was broken. And you know, the interesting thing, after that article was published online, everybody called the Today Show, Good Morning America, CNN, and I went on the Today Show and CNN, and I shared my journey of addiction and recovery, and I've been doing so ever since.
Oh, my goodness. And now you're involved in a new project which you just started. It's a national platform, Recovery Education. I love those two words, and when they're put together, I really love them.
Well, thank you.
Tell me about the project, how it came to be, what it is, and where it's going.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about our platform. It's called recoveryeducation.com, and yes, those two words really go well together. Yes. Because when a family member or when you're in recovery, you know that there's a lot you need to learn, that you need to educate yourself about. So a few of us got together and realized that there were not enough resources for parents of teenagers and young adults whose children were struggling with substance use disorder. And we were born out of experience. So several of my partners in recoveryeducation.com had children who struggled with addiction. Those kids all made it. They all got sober. But in the process, these parents realized there's not enough information for us. We didn't know what the heck to do. We did not even know how to begin the conversation with our child. So we realized that there was a huge need to educate and support and provide community for parents going through this. So we built it. And we launched a few months ago, and now we're partnering with treatment facilities and schools and insurance companies and women's health companies to educate as many people as we can, as many parents who are very confused about addiction.
Yeah.
And they don't know where to begin.
Right.
So we help them in this journey.
They know about the addiction because they've lived through the addiction.
Well,
they don't know about recovery.
They may not know about recovery. And certainly a lot of parents feel shame about their child. If their child is struggling with drug and alcohol problems, they feel like it's their fault. So often a parent will approach their child in a judgmental way or with anger and resentment.
Of course.
And that doesn't work.
Yeah.
You have to come to them and talk about it with love and saying, we love you so much that we want to talk to you about this problem. And we want to help you as much as we can, and we want to support you. And sometimes that support looks like going away for treatment. Sometimes it's inpatient, sometimes it's outpatient. Treatment looks like a lot of different things, and we wanted to let parents know that there are so many options out there, and that addiction, as we know, is a family disease, and it has to be treated as a family. So this is all about bringing parents together, making sure they are aligned, that they set boundaries with their child, and that the other siblings in the family are also part of the recovery process.
Because it is all together. I mean, the family gets sick together, the family must get well together.
Must heal together. And so we are providing a lot of information on how to heal.
How does that work? What does that look like?
So we have a curriculum that when you go to recoveryeducation.com, you can participate in all 18 modules of our curriculum, or one or two, or however many you want. And the different modules that we provide range from prevention to what are the physical signs of addiction, to how to begin the conversation, to what treatment options are best, to insurance information, legal information, how to heal as a family. We also do a module on fentanyl and naloxone. And in my opinion, naloxone needs to be in every home in America.
Talk more about that. It's very important.
Yes. So the good news about naloxone, and it's really known as Narcan. The good news is that the FDA just approved it for over-the-counter use. And for people who don't know what it is, it's most commonly in a nasal spray. and naloxone reverses the deadly effects of an opioid overdose. So it is available now with a prescription, but the FDA gave approval for you don't need a prescription anymore. So hopefully by the end of the summer, we'll be seeing naloxone available
Oh,
at drugstores and hopefully at even places like 7-Eleven.
yeah.
It'll be available widely throughout the country. And, a lot of parents say, well, I don't want to keep naloxone in the house because that's just giving my child permission to use drugs. And to us, we say that doesn't make sense. It is better for you to be prepared in the event that the worst happens, that your child takes a pill that has fentanyl in it,
Yeah.
or your child has friends over for a big party. They're all in the basement drinking. They might be drinking or taking pills or smoking weed, and those things may contain fentanyl. And wouldn't you rather be able to save someone in your household who might be overdosing?
Yeah. And, I live in Seattle,
Yeah.
and a statistic came out the other day that was so sobering. 2 people every day die of fentanyl overdose in downtown Seattle. 2 a day.
I am surprised that number is not higher, to tell you the truth, because it's everywhere now.
Yeah.
The cartels have
Yep.
infiltrated our markets, and
Yeah.
they're getting the stuff from China that is going to Mexico, then they're putting it together, and it is pouring over the border every day in Arizona, California, and Texas.
And we need
And
to
it's-
pour over the border and in every city Narcan.
We do. And so, maybe we can prevent those 2 deaths every
Yeah,
day
yeah.
if we have Narcan in every home
Yeah.
and in every hospital, in every restaurant, in every workplace.
Yeah, it's so important, and the work that you're doing is wonderful. So if people go to recoveryeducation.com, they can find out all about it, and they can do it on their own.
That's right.
Are there also support groups that are going to be available?
Yes. So, in fact, we have a wonderful feature of our platform that is a private way for parents to connect with each other. They can do it anonymously by choosing an avatar on the platform. They don't have to show their face or show their name.
Nice.
They can come up with a name that they want.
Yep.
And this way, they directly talk to each other in basically what is a fancy chat room. And you can ask parents anything you want and get answers in real time. And one other feature we're very proud of is that we have live events on the platform Monday through Friday where our
Wow.
doctors come on. They present about a variety of topics, and then we take live Q&A, which is almost unheard of. So the experts will come on and talk about their topic, and then we open it up for questions for as long as it takes, and every question gets answered in real time. I do 2 of these presentations a week on Thursdays and Fridays, and I absolutely love presenting. Right now I'm focused on fentanyl, on vaping, which is really hurting our kids.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about the impact of cannabis on the young developing brain, because I think those are 3 of the most important topics right
And
now.
the whole area of cannabis, we could talk about that forever and ever. I mean, it's becoming legal everywhere,
Yeah.
and people don't realize the impact, and we're going to start seeing it. We're seeing it now.
Well, the concentration of THC is, look, I smoked a few joints in college.
When you
Pot
had a-
was never my thing, but I was probably smoking oregano. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah,
this was not top quality stuff.
Yeah, separate the stems and the seeds.
Yeah, I mean, it was just dreadful marijuana. It really didn't do much, but we thought we were, this is awesome. We're getting high. We probably weren't.
Yeah.
But the point is that the THC has gone from 4% to like 20% now.
Yeah.
And so kids are ingesting a lot of THC. Their bodies aren't ready for it. And it's having a terrible impact on their bodies and brains.
Yeah. Well, family is so important, and what you're doing fits right into that, and helping and providing an avenue not only out of addiction but into the recovery process. Recovery is an amazing place to be. I started my career back in 1975 in Santa Barbara, and one of the first projects I did as director of the National Council on Alcoholism was to do an 18-hour telethon with Dick Van Dyke.
Oh, my. And he's Is he 96 or 98 now? And he's still sober.
Still
and he's
sober and
still
still
out
dancing.
there. He's still dancing. How wonderful that you got to partner with him.
He was so great. But it was 18 hours of television time to talk about the fact that alcoholism is a treatable disease.
Yeah.
Now, it was meant to be a fundraiser for the organization that I was directing, and it was a disaster as a fundraiser. But it was incredibly successful because, in the typical fashion of a telethon, here's the pledge number, call this number to donate money. People were calling that number not to donate, but to ask for help.
Ask for help.
So I had the good fortune of having people from the local AA community, the General Service Office, answering the phones as volunteers. So they were doing 12-step work over the phones. People who wanted to give money couldn't get through because people were on the phone talking to people who needed help. So from that standpoint, it was a huge success. The reason I'm mentioning that is the theme that I used for that is the theme that I continue to use up to this very day, which is the bright side of addiction is recovery.
And there is a bright side.
And people don't look at the bright side. They think of the person who is strung out, dying on the street, Skid Row, you name it. They think of the negative. They think of their dad who can't get sober or can't get well. They don't understand that when you cross over and you enter into the world of recovery, it is a new, wonderful world.
Yeah, you move from the darkness into the light, and nothing grows in the dark. And you said something important a minute ago. This is not a curable disease,
right?
But it is treatable.
And has to be manageable. When you go through treatment, you are given the tools to maintain lifelong recovery. Now, if you don't use the tools, you could be in trouble. But it's the same with cancer, the same with diabetes. You get out of the hospital from those diseases. They give you a plan, a follow-up plan to stay healthy. If you follow it, you stay healthy. The same way with addiction. It's not a 30-day program.
No.
Most people think, well, it's 30 days, I'm healed.
And then I'm cured.
Yeah, I'm cured. No. And I do not use the word aftercare. I use continuing care because it is a continuing process. And I don't use relapse prevention because what it is recovery enhancement. How is your recovery different today than it was yesterday? And how can it be better tomorrow? And sometimes we use relapse prevention, and it's almost a trigger for relapse. People sit around in treatment centers and they hear about all these relapses and they say, well, I can go out again, I can have another relapse. Yeah, you may have another relapse, but you may not have another recovery.
Right.
So it's an ongoing process.
I do think it's important to mention that relapse is often part of recovery.
Of course it is.
And
yes,
it doesn't mean you're done.
No.
It doesn't mean anyone's going to shame you or blame you or judge you. You can start over anytime. And the relapse is, you can look at it as a restart.
Right. And the beauty of AA is you can come back at any time. At any time. We had a guy on the show about a month and a half ago who said he'd just come from an AA meeting and he was on a high. He said, boy, it was one of the great meetings. There was a guy who'd been sober for 27 years who went out and got drunk. And that I needed to hear that. And I looked at him and I thought, what? And he said, I need to know that somebody at 27 years can drink again. It's a selfish program. I needed to hear that.
You're right. And it sounds antithetical, but I need to hear that. In fact, thank you for telling me that because I have 16 years of recovery. I could go out and drink literally right after this interview because I think I got it. I'm fine. I can be one of those people who drinks every once in a while. I can't drink at all, not one drop.
Absolutely.
And for me, lest I get lazy, and I'll tell you, I just came out of a kind of a dry period. So I'm going to tell on myself because I think it's important to be rigorously honest.
Yeah.
I came out of a period of about 6 months where I really wasn't going to meetings, and I was dry. I wasn't really in recovery. And a friend called me out on it, and she said, you're sick right now. And I said, you know what? Thank you. You just saved me. Rather than being angry with her, I was grateful to her. So, of course, I'm back on, it's all as well. I'm here at this conference and, back into AA and love it.
Yeah. Recovery is living proof. And you are living proof. Thank you, Laurie, for being on the program. I appreciate it, and we'll stay in touch. And again, I want to give the website out again, recoveryeducation.com, and you will find all you need to know.
You'll find so much excellent information and support.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep doing the good work you're doing.
And you too.
Well, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Laurie Dhue. She's an amazing woman and great recovery. By the way, I want to remind listeners of this podcast that if you would like to share your story of recovery, regardless of the path that you've chosen, and as long as you've been in continuous recovery for at least a year or more, I'd kind of like to know about it. I'd like to share your story and help you carry the message. Drop me a note at recoverycoasttocoast at comcast.net. Coming up next, Dick Van Dyke's going to share some thoughts on writing and recovery. We'll do that in just 30 seconds.
She has always been your baby, but when your daughter got into drugs and alcohol, she turned into a stranger. What do you do? Where do you turn? Contact Sundown M Ranch. Sundown's nationally recognized youth treatment program guides young people back to a life free of drugs and alcohol. All treatment is gender specific and directed by caring certified professionals in a safe environment. You can get your daughter back and get to know her again. Go to www.sundown.org to learn more.
Now, as promised, actor Dick Van Dyke, a guy in long-term recovery, with some thoughts on writing and recovery.
An emotion ceases to be a passion as soon as we form a clear and distinct idea of it. Baruch Spinoza. We're always on the lookout for tools to help us live more comfortably. The most effective ones, we found, are often those that are uncomplicated and easy to apply. One such tried and true tool is to put our thoughts and feelings in writing. There are a lot of advantages to writing things out. For one thing, it helps us to better understand ourselves. When we put our thoughts and feelings on paper, we can sort them out and deal with them in an organized way, rather than trying to handle them as they float about haphazardly. Writing can be especially useful during trying times. Problems seem to return to normal size and fall into perspective when we write them down. Listing solutions, alternatives, and pros and cons enables us to visualize exactly what we have to work with. This brings us greater assurance and the ability to make informed choices. When we put our fears and resentments on paper, we set the stage for sharing them with another person. Once our feelings have become crystallized into actual words that we can see, it's much easier to articulate them. Of course, writing is also an important safety valve. It gives us a chance to vent our anger and to get rid of irrational thoughts before they get out of hand. Thought for today: negative feelings and thoughts are much more easily dissolved once they've been crystallized in writing.
Well, that wraps up this edition of Recovery Coast to Coast, the national podcast. Now, if you've enjoyed our podcast, please share it with your friends. You can do that very easily by social media or simply telling someone about it. You can find all of our podcasts at recoverycoasttocoast.org. And if you'd like to get in touch with us, our email is recoverycoasttocoast@comcast.net. And please hit the subscribe or follow button. It's free, and you'll be notified the next time we publish a podcast. And remember, if you know someone who is experiencing problems with alcohol or any other drug, here's a 24-hour national helpline. It offers free information. It offers confidential treatment referrals. And they have Spanish-speaking individuals available as well. 1-800-622-HELP. And we encourage you to check out Find Support, that's one word, findsupport.gov. It's a brand new website, and it's designed for individuals, families, and friends, including information on how to pay for treatment, including where to find low-cost and free treatment options, and a whole lot more. Check it out, findsupport.gov. And join us next time for America's Voice for Recovery, Recovery Coast to Coast, the national podcast. And another shout out to our sponsoring organization, Sundown M Ranch, where recovery begins. Sundown.org. I'm Neil Scott, reminding you to stay healthy, live in gratitude, and be kind to others. The bright side of addiction is recovery. Pass it on.